Hello and good evening, everyone. Welcome to the second episode of Diari Film, where we talk and discuss about film. It's a student-led show that discusses anything about films between the students and the industry people. So let me first quickly introduce myself. My name is Jonathan. I'm the moderator for today's webinar. On behalf of the organizer, I would like to welcome all of you to our Diary Film, a FCA webinar series. Thank you for spending us your time to be with us. So let us begin. If you're using mobile phone, you might not experience the best immersive view, and you might only notice only one panelist if you're using phone. So it will be recommended to use PC or Mac to get the best experience for your immersive view. If you're still using a mobile, please change it to PC or Mac. So back to the topic. As you know, this month is a month of Halloween, which relates to today's webinar, horror films. Fun fact, one of the top two highest ever grossing Malaysian movies are horror movies. We are living in a diverse, multicultural country with plenty of traditional beliefs, still beliefs in our day-to-day lives. There's superstitions, there's taboos, and so much more, which has turned into big horror movies in Malaysia. So for today's session, we'll be focusing on how to make and market horror films and how does one start to make a horror film and what are the elements of horror films that made its way to the hearts of our Malaysian audience. So as you can see, we have four great panelists with us today. They're all wearing black shirts. Sadly, I'm wearing a white shirt. I was not invited here. But starting off with our first panelist, with his short film Iron 10, which he wrote and directed and edited. And right now, he is the director of Raw, who has gotten many recognitions, such as being the Malaysian Oscar submission 2020, and also noticed by English director Edgar Wright. If you haven't watched the film Raw, it's currently on Netflix. Also, he is the visual effect supervisor for Namron's 1-2 Jaga and Tan Tril Mui's Barbarian Invasion. We have Mr. Emir right here with us. Do you want to say hi, Mr. Emir? All right.
Hello.
All right. Hi. Thanks, sir, for being here. So, our second panelist, who has made many great short films since her studies in London, which has made through many film festivals with a short films such as Pasak, Seesaw, Vinegar Bath, and Lagi Senang Jaga Sekandang Lembu, which is English. It means it's easier to raise cattle, which was shortlisted for the Horizonte Short Film Competition in Venice International Film Festival in 2017, making her the first Malaysian female director to achieve this. Let's welcome Amanda. All right, Amanda, say hi. All right, nice. Next, our third panelist, who has won the grand prize and a few more awards during the BMW Shorties in 2014 with his short film Rosita Binti Roslan. Not only that, he has been an art director and production designer in various feature films such as Nova, Alif Dalam Tujuh Dimensi, Sejoli, Raw, and many more. Let's welcome Mr. Taufiq Kamal.
Hello, hi everyone.
I guess everybody's still shy, but no worries. Lastly, you might have seen his face on YouTube before, with a total subscribers of nearly 150,000 and a total of 27 million views in his YouTube channel, Theo Pixel. Subscribe if you haven't. He does reviews about movies, TV series, both internationally and locally, and sometimes he reviews about food too. And he also does interviews with some of the film industry players such as Joko Anwar, Namron, Amir Mohammed, and so much more. We have Zhafvlog with us today. All right, Zaf. Okay. All right. So one more thing to our dear audience, there will be a Q&A session midway during our webinar. So if you have any questions you would like to ask our panelists, there are two ways to do so. Number one, you could use the raise the hand emoji in Zoom, which is at the bottom, and you can start asking questions midway through our webinar. Or if you are shy or an introvert like me, you can ask your questions in the chat box, and our technical team will try their best to compile all the questions, and hopefully the questions are related to today's topic. We had also compiled a few questions from the registration form, and we will be using it on the webinar later on. And finally, please be respectful towards the panelists during the Q&A session, and also mind your language in the chat box. Without further ado, thank you so much everyone for joining. Thank you so much, Mr. Emir, Amanda, Taufiq, and Zaf for coming today. It's a great honor to able to have you all here tonight. So let's start off with our first question, which many Malaysians also ask about this question. Why do you think Malaysians love to watch horror film? As I mentioned just now, it's one of the top two highest grossing genres in Malaysia. So if anyone would like to answer this, how about I start off with Mr. Emir? Why do you think Malaysians love horror films? As a filmmaker or as a movie viewer or yeah?
I think it's easy. I think because it is, if you look at the point of view of just entertainment, so I guess horror is one of those films that's easy to watch. Yeah. That's it.
That's okay. Wow, that's a short and simple answer. How about you, Amanda? Why do you think Malaysians love horror film?
I don't know. I don't think it's just Malaysians. I think so many people love horror film. But I guess specifically for Malaysians, yeah, like what Emir said, it's entertaining. It is shocking. It's thrilling, and it is like a kind of escapism place. Not that my films are like that, but traditional horror films are, like super fun, terrifying, adrenaline rush. So that's probably why people like horror films. That's why I like horror films. Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. Nice answer. How about Mr. Taufiq? Why do you think Malaysians love horror? Like, why would someone pay money to watch something to get scared of?
Personally, I think it's because of our tradition, I guess, our culture. We have a lot of superstition, like we believe in superstition. Our religion, I guess, we are multicultural, and each of our religion do believe in the superstition, or we are closely attached to it. So I guess maybe we feel more closer. We can communicate more. We can feel more by watching horror. I guess it's just that. I mean, to me.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Taufiq. But how about you, Zaf? Since I believe you watch a lot of horror films, not only international but also locally. But why do you think Malaysians love to watch horror films, or why do people generally love horror films?
I think from my perspective is that a lot of the audience, personally, myself, I haven't seen a real life ghost at all, but we have heard someone else have seen it. So the the feeling of wanna see the ghost in real life is only being able to watch in movies, in cinemas. And I think for me, myself again, I think it's for challenging myself. Am I too scared to face these horrible faces of ghosts or anything? I think that's one of the reasons why it is so popular among Malaysian. Yeah.
All right. It's true that many people, I mean, during high school, many of us also challenged to like, hey, you don't need to watch horror film, is it? Are you a coward or something? But yeah, I guess that's kind of true also, like, where many people want to challenge themselves to see can they accept it. And on to the next question. This question, a few people asked, which is related to the censorship in our local cinemas. Someone asked, how much gore and violence is acceptable in Malaysian screening? And is there any other way to achieve horror without gore and violence? And also, if we Malaysian censorship board doesn't have this kind of limitations, could our local horror films stand among the international horror films? I think this question would be suitable if Amanda wants to go first, because most of your horror film doesn't have that gore or that violence. But yeah.
I don't know. I think I do have some gore. I love gore, but I mean, I can't speak for the censorship here, so I can never answer like how much is acceptable, how much isn't acceptable. We as filmmakers don't even know what can be censored sometimes. So that one is a difficult answer, difficult question to answer. But I think horror films can have as much gore and nothing and no blood at all. I mean, it's all about creativity. It's all about storytelling. Obviously, the typical saying of like less is more. Like some people love the idea of like not showing anything and then leave it up to the imagination. It can be terrifying. But then there are also brilliant horror films where like heads fall off and blood spurts everywhere and it's just a big gore fest. And same with monsters, same with ghosts. So I think, in general, I think Malaysia is kind of acceptable of all these kind of horrific tropes because we love it. So that's what I think, yeah.
Okay. How about you, Mr. Taufiq? Because as an art director or production designer, let's say if you communicate with a director, would he like tell you how much gore on that level he wants, or what do you think about this? Like, is gore really that important, or violence really that important in a horror film? as an art director and production designer?
Based on my past experience, different directors have different
Is he like,
design art. Hello?
I think you're lagging,
Hi.
or is it just
You
me?
guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. It's good now.
Okay. Am I clear?
Yeah, clear now.
Okay. Sorry, it's the internet. So I
No
guess from my past experience, different directors have different views of what is scary and what's not. They have different styles. As a production designer or an art director, you work with different directors to execute their vision. And to me, there's no enough gore or not enough gore. Scary is very general. Visually scary, sound, using sound effects scary, storytelling scary are all different tools, I guess, for scare tactic or for a horror film. To answer your question about the censorship in Malaysia, to me, honestly, I don't know where, what is able or not, we are able or not able to show on screen. Um, I'm still not sure. So I guess, yeah, I can't answer your question about that.
No worries, no worries. So basically, it's a question to everyone also. Like, how much is gore? How much is too gory? How much is not too gory? But how about you, Mr. Emir? For Rope, yeah, what do you think about it? Like, does censorship really? If there's no censorship, does a horror film can go to the next extent level, or do you think it needs horror to only show that? It needs gory to only show that it's horror.
It depends on how you think what a horror film is. Because for me, I love disturbing film rather than horror. So if I watch something like films from Michael Haneke, for example, Funny Games or whatsoever, and to me that's very disturbing. Even though there's nothing, nothing, I mean, he doesn't show anything much. That's how I see things. Even for example, another films called Killing of Sacred Deer. That's to me is very disturbing and something that horrifying for me. So I guess depends how you define that also, because there are tropes that you use. For example, there are films that are meant for gore, you know, for violence. It's just part of the film, but there are films that are more into disturbing you in terms of your mind or whatsoever. So that also depends lah on how you see things. In terms of censorship, for Malaysia, I think it's more about whether do you how I think because it's very sensitive when it comes to religion over here in Malaysia. So everything has to be looked into that perspective. So I guess, for example, my film where I have at the end of the story that I have the evil side that win the game. Usually they won't let it happen. But for my case, I think it went through because I didn't specifically put any religion into the film. Although I have the sentence Al-Quran in front of the film, but that's it. So I didn't define who is this bad person or is the good person. What do they believe in? So in a way, it helps to get approval. So maybe that's how they see it. That's all for this, just from my experience. That's all I think. What or how they would think or they would want to censor when it comes to local film.
Thank you, Mr. Emir, for that sharing. But lastly, how about you, Zaf? Do you think that as a Malaysian audience, do you think that with gore and violence that our horror films would be better, and could we even go to the international level if we have not much of that limitations?
regarding censorship, as far as I've seen movies for reviewing for almost 4 years, I think the problem with censorship in Malaysia is because it doesn't have standard things to say, because back in 2018, I saw movies that are heavily gore or bloody as hell, but it went for 18 and above. But somehow in 2021, it ridiculously changes every time the people have changed. So the thing about the censorship is you have to adapt to survive to that censorship board. I think it's the main thing that the filmmakers around Malaysia they have to adapt to survive to show their works. That's from my side.
Speaking of, you said the change, which also leads to my next question. I didn't plan this, but it's kind of nice because this question will start off with you, Zaf, and I believe you have already, like what I said, you have watched a lot of local horror films, and so goes to our filmmakers here. But my question is, what has changed in Malaysian horror cinema over the past few years, and also the movie audience? Like, what's your opinion on it? That how our horror cinema has starting to change. Has it been better? Has it like gone into a different direction? But this question could be for anyone to answer. But let's start off with you first, Saf.
There has been a lot of good films around these 4 years, especially Roh by Emir. That film changes the perspective of local horror cinema from you have to have ugly and horrible faces of ghosts. Rather than that, you have this horrifying theme and surrounding for the film Roh. So I think there's a little amount of film that are quite good, but as the amount of the trash films it's quite a lot for these past 2 years. It's a lot, especially during pandemic. Oh my god.
Well, if you guys want to know about Zaf's opinion on that, you guys can check out his YouTube channel about the top 10 some most sampah Malaysian horror films. But how about you, Taufiq? What do you think over the past few years? You have been working on a lot of sets, and maybe I believe you also watch a lot of horror films. But do you think the direction has changed in the new direction? Has it gone better? Or what do you think about our Malaysian horror cinema? What has it? Yeah.
To be honest, I don't watch a lot of films, especially horror. But I guess it's starting to change. It's evolving. It's the viewers. I mean, filmmakers are starting to experiment more. Not using your typical jump scare or using a scary figure as your main thing. Daylight horror is it's I guess it's not new, but I guess people are starting to appreciate and to how do I say it? To receive it more, I guess. But I don't know about this because there's again viewers talking about viewers. There's your grassroots viewers, and the more the more how do I say it? The more experimental viewers, which is they are more willing to accept all these new movies or open movies, not to say at the house, like I say, daylight horrors, and still the 60%, 70% is your grassroots, which is still in love with your typical jump scare, your typical horror figure, hantu in front of your face, I guess that's a challenge for filmmakers in Malaysia to break that barrier lah. To be honest.
Okay. Wait, is he lagging? Okay, he's back already. All right, cool. Yeah. All right. Thank you for that. That moment of thinking to say that Malaysians have to start breaking the barriers. I think most of filmmakers here already. I mean, like Amanda's horror film is a different kind of horror film where it's not the kind of show into your face, oh, ghosts come out, jump scare, haha, horror film. But Amanda's one is if you guys ever, maybe next time, I don't know if Amanda is willing to share next time, but Amanda's horror film was in a very different kind of approach. I think Amanda could share more about this, but also what do you think about our Malaysian horror cinema over the past few years?
Well, the thing is, I don't watch that many Malaysian horror films. I do tend to watch it like every few years. I will see like what is the big tentpole horror film of the time. And honestly, I think since Raw came out, I was like so happy. Like Raw is like the first film that will change the landscape, hopefully, because finally I see a horror film that is talking about, something deeper, has a total different style. So I think I was really happy to see that. And then going a bit about, in that answer, let's hope that Raw can kind of change that face, and we are going to create like, different types of films, not just your stereotypical jump scares with ghosts or, I mean, we all know how to make horror films, and they're great actually, because I'm a big fan of horror films, but sometimes I like to push the boundary. I like to step outside, of that box and look at horror films in a different way. So that, I guess, leads into your other question, where with my particular way, because I do consider myself as a horror filmmaker, but I don't think that my films are scary, and I don't intend to scare. Like, I intend it to be more about a thought process, like think about things, for example, think about friendship. For example, like my short film that you mentioned, it's really a film about two best friends, two girls who are best friends. It's just one of them is a Pontianak. I do have darkness. I love darkness. Like, so, I do play on those tropes. I love horror tropes. So, of course, I will have blood. I will have special effects makeup. But really the heart of the story will be about love and friendship. And then, other things that I play with, because I love monsters. Like, I love the things that people fear. For example, Pontianaks, Penanggalan, were-tigers. Like, for me, those are my heroes. So if I just kind of write it as if they're the heroes, then the horror totally changes. And I always like to question, like, is the monster really this monster, or is it humanity? Is it people? So that's kind of how I play with it. And I think that I find the genre of horror so exciting, because you can break these boundaries, you can think outside of the box. And I'd love to see more local films kind of approach genre in that way as well. Not just horror, even with action, even with sci-fi and all big genre films. So yeah.
Thank you, Amanda. Like, we'll pass it to Mr. Emir, but since everybody was also praising Ro, so I also want to praise Ro. So I remember when Ro was released last year around August, me and my friend also planned to watch it. We did watch it, and we thought that Ro is going to be those kind of typical horror films, because we were not also exposed to many horror films, because most of horror film during the past few years before Ro was like Munafik, Hantu Kak Lima, that's a big comedy, but they were kind of like showing the figure itself that this thing is going to be scary, but so that whenever that person comes or that monster or creature comes, we should be afraid. But instead, Raw was a different kind of approach, like what you guys mentioned, where it's the whole film, it has that scary feeling, where it's a really different thing, where it broke the boundaries, and we are not following the so-called step-by-step of how to make a horror film kind of step-by-step. But yeah, Mr. Emir, what do you think? Like, even you receive recognition by other people too for Raw.
I think for us, because we it's such a small budget, we can experiment. We took the risk, so it's different. Because if you think about, as a producer, if you think about Malaysian market, is unfortunately it's very small. is very, very small compared to, for example, Indonesia. And you don't have enough room to play around, or you don't have enough room to take risks, especially when it comes as to producers. So it's unfortunately it is that way. Um, for me, I consider myself fortunate to be able to do a small budget film where I can do whatever I want. At least I can try something out, something slightly different in Malaysia, although I think it's not something different if you compare it international. But yeah, so I came from that that place at that time where when Amir Muhammad gave me a bunch of money, okay, that's it. This is the money that you're gonna do for the film, and okay, we know it's a small film. We know it's not gonna be something big. We know we're not gonna sell as much. So we we that helps us to do something different in a way. So if you talk about something like, for example, bigger studios like Infinitas, Astros, or Media Prima, I don't think I will be able to do it at all as something like Raw, right? So that's the thing. I mean, that our market itself is very small, and it is not that easy to do something different. But I do know that there are a few films in development, already in post production, which are horror but also different. So one of it, of course, Amanda, who haven't shoot yet. So I hope you're gonna do yours soon. So that's gonna be different too, right? There's a few more that is finishing up, which I know is different than whatever we have right now. So I hope, yeah, I think it's getting better. So I hope people are more open to this kind of thing. Yeah.
All right. So, guys, please support your local horror cinema. Please don't watch it illegally. And yeah, so on to the next question. To all our panelists, and this is the question I guess we received mostly from our Google Forms, and a lot of people ask, what do you think makes a good horror film? Like, what are the elements that makes a good horror film? Like, is it the story side or is it the technical side? And also, is there any other way that supernatural or psychopaths as the antagonist? Like, what are the other elements that can be used to make it more fresh and new instead of the similar cliche structure that we were discussing just now? Anyone wants to go first? This is a tough question even for me, but yeah, anyone want to go first? Anyone? Okay, like, oh, Amanda already unmuted. Nice.
Zaf will go first.
Zaf will go first. Yeah, Zaf. Yeah, since you already mentioned that, yeah, you don't want to see those typical kind of thing, but what do you think makes a good horror film? Like, is it the story? Is it the lighting? Is it the music? Or yeah, and is there any other ways to show an antagonist without being a psychopath or a supernatural being to be a horror film?
Personally, I think it's everything. All of those what you said just now, it's all of those aspects. It has to be at the top notch of each of this aspect. But personally, I think when I want to watch a horror film and in the cinema, when I walked out, I want to feel helpless. I want to feel so desperately wanna keep myself locked down, or when I want to go home, when I'm driving, I felt like there's everything around me, and I don't turn myself around. So I just drive to my home. So that's the feeling. I want to have that feeling after I watch a horror film. So that thing is so precious that a lot of local movies tend to forget most of the time. They want to have that jump scare, that horrible faces just inside that hall only. There's nothing comes out after that. Yeah. Have you ever go to the cinema and then after you watch it, you felt like there's nothing? You went home that, alah, tak ada apa-apa lah, hantu, tak ada benda semua ni. Tapi ada certain film yang you guys tonton, balik tu, nak drive tu, tak pandang kiri kanan. Dah lah lalu hutan kan. Oh, yang tu memang paling best lah. Yang tu memang paling awesome punya experience lah. That is personally for me lah.
How about let's pass it to Mr. Taufiq.
What makes a good horror film? I guess it's everything. Well, number one, it's the storytelling, ways of storytelling, how you tell the story. Um, it's to me not necessarily on the technical side or the production side. Like it's just the story or how you capture those sort of moments or how you tell a story. To me, it's stuck in my head. It's Blair Witch Project. I don't know whether if you guys still remember. It was shot on a DV cam. It was a really really low budget horror film, but it blew up and it boomed. To me, when I first watched it, I was like, "Wow, this is brilliant. This is it's scary, but it was brilliant. It broke all the your I guess your structure. Your you need a big budget or you need a really good production. That was to me was I guess it all depends on how you want to execute storytelling and ways of you scaring the audience. That's what makes a good horror film. And our local filmmakers would experiment more, not just follow your the basic recipe of the typical horror films.
One more question also, because there was someone also asking about this, but what do you need to take note on being an art director or a production designer? Like, what do you need to take on for that when you're doing a horror genre film? Like, how do you think for that kind of concept? Like, would it be scary, or do you like have references for this
I
to
mean,
make it work? Yeah.
okay, from my experience with Rohla, Ime has Emir has already his vision. He has all this vision. He knows what he wants. So he just tells me the backstory. He gives. So we go through references. Um, Basically, he knows what he wants A to Z. So I'm there just to execute his vision. But then also being an art director, production designer, you are working with a budget. So when you have a budget, you need to sit down with the team, especially with the director, to I guess to discuss what's possible, what's the best possible way um, to execute certain scenes with a budget that you have. Where do we spend more on a certain scenes, and where do we I guess try to execute in a more budget friendly way. But look and feel wise, obviously you need to lock down the look and feel. Once you have a look and feel, it all gels, and you just have to make it consistent throughout the movie. Um, I guess from art department side, from an art director or production designer side, obviously if you're shooting a horror film, smoke using lights. So all this we do. I do discuss with Imi. He really knows because in the film he uses a lot of fire, a lot of earth elements for instance, he in raw we use a gasoline lamp for for a source of light, so that we sat down with the gaffer team to place cleverly where to place all these lamps for to get source of lighting, and certain scenes Imi knows where to place it to make it more, I guess, more scarier in a way. And yeah, that's from me.
Thank you. How about you, Mr. Emil? Like, what do you think is the important elements in making a horror film? And also, since your direction of a horror film is different, like, what do you think? Is there any other possible ways to show a villain or an antagonist rather than being a supernatural or a psychopath? Yeah.
I wish I know the answer. So,
Don't we all
But-
want to know the answer?
yeah, I think we all want to know the answer. I'm just trying. But for me, like Zaf mentioned, I like something where after the film, then it still lingers in you. It doesn't have to be scary, or it doesn't have to be an ugly movie. It's just something that something that film buries something in you. That is something I always like about film, regardless whether it's horror or not. But when it comes to horror, I like something that the unseen forces, things that is very evil that you don't know what the hell it is. It's just something. Recently I watched for example, the medium, a Thai film. That 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 is just something else. It's just something that, wow, you just cannot explain after you watch that film. It has everything. It has gore, it has ghosts, it has sort of zombie. But then again, it's not just about having all that. It's about, at the end of the film, what do you feel about it? I think that's the most important. It can be anything actually. It's just a matter of how you close the film, or how everything set together, and how it, it gives something back to you after you watch it. Yeah, it's very hard to say what it is. I have no idea myself.
No
Yeah.
worries, no worries. So yes, so basically, guys, don't show, but let the audience feel it by itself. All right, how about you, Amanda? What do you think?
I don't know. I don't think it's about don't show. It doesn't matter what you do, but I am totally on the same boat as like what the other panelists have said. For me, like the most successful horror or any kind of film are films that you just can't. It just stays with you. So if you want to talk about specifically horror, I mean, you can just talk about the classic films, like even The Exorcist. I watched that when I was like 14, and still to this day, sometimes I'm like, oh my God, like, I have this image, and this is something that is incredibly hideous and gore and stuff. So you don't have to be so like, oh, I'll be careful and not show everyone things. Like in whatever technical things you have, for example, whether it's lots of gore, lots of VFX, whatever, to me, that doesn't matter. It is how you make the audience feel at the end of the film. So you can have a very low budget, silent, no blood at all film. And if the audience come out and they still think about this film 2 weeks later, I think that's super powerful. You can also have a crazy slasher film with like limbs flying everywhere. And the same thing, if the audience comes out and they remember it, and they can also be excited about it. So horror doesn't have to be like, oh yeah, maybe think about scary things or important things in life. I also, want to mention that horror can be super fun. So we have horror comedies, we have, even slasher films have this sense of humor where you just want to go in and just like scream. And then after that, you go out to the cinema and you want to tell your friends, like, guys, we have to all go together because this was like a total roller coaster of a film. So I think there are many versions of what horror can be. But at the end of the day, I guess the answer to really come out is like, how do the audience feel at the end of it? Like, I think that is what is really important. Like, do they think about things? Are they afraid of things? Do they have a good time? Do they laugh? Do they cry? So all these things are very valid for any filmmaker, in spite of whatever genre it is. Your audience, it's how your audience views it at the end. Yeah.
Can I add on something?
Yeah, sure, Zaf.
Just now you guys said about is there any villain that doesn't have the horrible faces or the bloody faces? I want to share you guys this movie. I think a lot of you guys have seen it, the Get Out. So the villain is all of the family, and they have never had that insidious moment of the family. So I think that's the plot twist, that turn around, and that is what makes the film is terrifying. How the white and beautiful family turns out to be a psychotic family. So that is one of the things that I love about horror, that are not strictly founded with the cliche horror of ghosts and everything, right? So yeah, I think that's one of the things I want to share with you guys. Get Out by Jordan
Right.
Peele.
Yeah. Oh wow. Oh wow. It's actually a few years
add
back.
on that. I'm gonna
Yeah.
add
Go on. Go on.
I think like the whole like thing that maybe some people think horror has to be ugly, horror has to be a ghost, horror has to be a monster with fangs and no eye, whatever it is. It doesn't have to be like that. Like sometimes when I kind of talk to young filmmakers who want to make horror films, I actually just tell them to go back because they will write a script with a ghost or a hantu or atau like whatever disgusting looking thing, and I'll be like, why don't you go back home and you think about all the things that you're afraid of? And you're not just afraid of monsters. You can also be afraid of people. You can also be afraid of certain notions of society and how everything in your life, just note it down and you can actually turn that into a horror film with, you know, editing or whatever it is. But yeah, so it doesn't have to be ugly, gory, things. It's
Yeah.
like there's horror everywhere in the world. There's horror today. The pandemic is a horror right now. So yeah.
So is it a horror if we don't have enough budget to shoot also? Is that a horror too? All right. So before we're gonna take a break later on in 5 minutes, but I'm gonna ask some questions from the chat. And then we take a short break. There's a question by Ilhan. He says that is it true that big studios restrict filmmakers to go all out, especially in horror genre? If anyone has anyone heard of this issue, or does anyone know how to answer this? Like they don't want to take the risk that later this part might get banned or this part might get censored. Oh wow, someone is pointing at Mr. Emir already. Mr. Emir, do you want to answer that?
I don't know. I work with a small studio, so they're okay with everything. They're okay with whatever I did. So I can't say about Astro, or I can't say about big films. I don't have any experience on that, but I do know that there's a few films that I heard about where they just want to keep it simple, story tight, short, as long as the audience is entertained every 10 minutes or 15 minutes, there's something happen all the time, whether it's jump scare or whatever. I mean, that's how they see it, I guess. Yeah. So I guess it's true lah. In a way, because to them it's just about how do they entertain the viewers, and how to them they think that that's how they scare the audience, and by doing that the audience will tell their families, tell their friends, so that they can, get more ticket sales. Yeah.
So I guess it's based, if it's on the filmmaker point of view, it's more to the creative side, but whereas for the big studio, it's kind of like a money milking machine. Is that right? Where they want to think of some ways to like, or how do we gonna achieve a bigger box office? Like we need to put jump scares, we need to put some typical piano, slowly closer, zooming kind of thing. Is it the kind? Was that right?
I think it's fair in a way for them to ask that. Then again, because like I mentioned before, Malaysia is such a small market. There's not enough room to play around. When you talk about something like, for example, Dune, how can a big studio with 160 million budget let someone like Denise to do Dune? If you think about that really Hollywood way, they won't make Dune if it's not because of Denise. How he can play around, how he can make that film a bit different, something else. There's something not a typical sci-fi film. But then again, we're talking about international market here. That also people question, how can he make Dune? How can he make Blade Runner, which is it's not, it wasn't considered a bomb because it didn't make enough. Then again, if you think about Malaysia, then how? It's such a small market. So I hope one day the studio and also filmmaker can find a way for this. It's it's fair for them also to request what they want, but also as a filmmaker, you need to justify why and why should we go this way and why, it's a matter of these two sides. We need to work together to make it better. So I hope you have that one day.
Yeah, agree. How about you, Amanda? What do you think about this before we take our short mini break? Yeah.
No, I totally agree with Emir. I mean, even with my films, I don't go to studios mainly for fear of like not being able to experiment enough. And I do hope that I don't have that fear anymore. So my film is also like totally independent in terms of creatively. But again, I totally understand this is a business. You know, if someone's going to invest, they need to make that money back. And if you go with a film like Raw or like my kind of films, you don't know if that's going to make money. Like, these are people who are, first of all, like young first time feature film directors, and it's a huge risk, it's a huge gamble. So it's hard to get people to gamble that with that amount of money, or with any kind of budget. So yeah, I think what Emir is saying is to like, how do we get the studios to kind of believe in taking a risk and believe in taking a gamble? Like how Emir said, like Blade Runner 2046 is a huge budget, and Denis is already a really like established filmmaker, and he kind of didn't do very well box office wise with that film, but still it is this longevity of like believing in this director. Another director is like someone like Bong Joon-ho, who had like a terrible first film, and then he was just kept like having the support, and his craft was just built throughout his years, throughout his career, until you hit something like Parasite, which had all the support, all the Oscar support as well, from his own country and from his studios. And I think it's just understanding and how to pick the right artists and directors, and then you take the risk with them. They will fall, but you know that they're not going to fall forever. So it's such a gamble. It's really difficult even for studios. So I can't complain about them thinking that way.
So there's pros and cons if you want to go indie and if you're in a big studio. Oh, we have two questions from our attendees, but let's start off with the first handsome guy called Tan Zeng. What's your question? Introduce yourself and what's your question? Oh, he's giggling.
Okay, hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, sweet. All right, hi, my name is Danton, but you can call me Zen. I'm from FCA and Review. I kind of have this question for, I think, both Mr. Amir and Ms. Amanda here, because I watched both of your films before, and to me, I always have this, I always have this, like, I kind of have an idea back in my head. It's like, whether or not one film, whether or not it's like horror film or whatnot, like whether or not a film is like Malaysian enough, and that kind of thing. Because again, for horror films, right, it has a long, rich history from from the West and from the East, right, that kind of stuff. And I was kind of wondering to both directors that, you ever thought about like writing a film for a horror film or whatnot? Do you always have to ever consider in your mind, like, oh, whether or not this is Malaysian or not, or you just like, okay, I don't care about this, I'm just gonna write a simple story?
Right, thanks Zen for your question. Mr. Emmy is like thinking his question, but Amanda, do you want to answer it first?
Yeah, it's quite simple. I don't think about that. How do you constitute what is Malaysian anyway? Yeah, I'm Malaysian. It's I don't know. It's such a weird thing to think about. But no, I never think about that. And actually, the weird thing about me is because which is a bit of a struggle, is that I grew up in the UK. So therefore, my sensibilities are a bit different as well to other, maybe other Malaysians. But that doesn't stop me from being very proud of the films that I make and very proud to call it a Malaysian film. I don't know what is the boxes to take to constitute a Malaysian film, and nor do I even think about that when I write my scripts or when I make my film. Yeah, at the end of the day, I am the storyteller, so I don't tend to think about those things. I just want to make the best story that I can and make the best story that an audience will, want to watch, or at least like, yeah, I don't know what's, yeah, it's a difficult thing, but yeah, that's my answer.
All right. How about you, Mr. Emir? On row.
I think guess it depends on your intention at the end of the day. When you want to do this, whether you want to do it to sell to the local audience, or you want to do it purely to go to festivals, for example, or whether you want to do this something personal or you want to do something that people can relate to. It really depends on that actually. So as a filmmaker, you have to know what you want, and you have to define yourself, or what kind of filmmaker are you, right? Whether you want to be someone that studio wants to hire you, or you want to be just yourself, be a filmmaker as what you want. It depends really. It's hard to say. Yeah.
Izan, I hope that answer your question. Does it?
Yeah. Thank you very much to both directors.
Thank you, Tanzan, for your question. There's so many more questions to go. I think there's around 5 to 10 already. But yeah, let's go on with FD, the next one. Okay, please introduce yourself and and please tell us your questions. And if you guys still have any question, you guys can still ask, or you could raise up your hand. Thank you.
Okay, hello, greetings. So my name is Fatima, just FD. I'm a student from FCA as well, but I'm actually from the Philippines. So my question would actually be centered around Southeast Asian identity, in a sense that I think some of our attendees here are from Indonesia, are from, of course, Malaysia and Philippines as well. So the thing is, right, there's a similarity between our mythology. Like Pontianak, we have Aswang, we have Tianak, which is kind of like similar to Toyo, like those green vampire smurf baby in a sense. But what I want to ask is that, in a sense, right, how we view horror is kind of like different. Like, let's say the mythological creatures of the West, it doesn't scare me in a sense, at least personally. Like, let's say the gargoyle, the minotaur, they don't scare me as much as our mythological creatures. So my question would be, do you think that our Southeast Asian identity kind of like affect the way we see horror, especially if it's centered around the culture? So anyone could answer this one. Thank you.
This is like a examination question already. Everybody is thinking. Anyone who wants to go first? Oh man, I give Zaf first last since Zaf was pointing to a lot of people. Yep, Zaf. How would you answer that question?
My perspective is merely from a normal audience. I'm not from the industry players or anything. I think if you compare Southeast Asia punya horror films to Hollywood, there's a lot of differences between the ghosts. I think Southeast Asia have that grounded feeling and horrible feelings compared to the Hollywood ghosts. In similarities, I think a lot of Hollywood ghosts are merely transparency and just cover up with white clothes. So all of those ghosts or anything, it just, for me, I don't see that as a scary thing. I see Pontianak as the scary thing. I see Toyol is a scary thing. So it depends. I think it just depends. It just depends on what do you want to do with your films. Is it going to be a hardcore, typical Southeast Asian ghost, or you want to do like Mr. Emir Roh, which is a hardcore horror film without any ghost? Yeah, that's the thing about you guys want to make a film, and you have to have your own target audience lah. If you want to go for the audience market, and it should have been the Southeast Asia ghosts and folklore. But if you want to go for a festival, I think Emir's point is much more relevant for that. That is just my personal opinion. Thank you.
Taufiq, you want to go next?
I guess it all boils down to culture, this cultural effect, where we are from. Obviously, we are more. We are from Southeast Asia. We can relate to Pontianak or Toyo instead of like vampires or Draculas. Again, it boils down to the cultural effect, but I guess horror is very, again, there's all types of horrors. There's psychologically, there's thriller is horror, a feeling is horror. It doesn't mean horror doesn't mean it has to be only a ghost or an entity. Horror can be a feeling, visually without a ghost can be horrific. It's just how you frame it or how you dress it. To answer your question, Fatima, I guess it's a culture. It's a cultural thing. We can relate more. We relate more to all these Pontianak, Puchong, Toyo, Hantu Gala, rather than all these vampires and Draculas because we are not surrounded or we can't relate to them. That's my point of view.
Amanda or Emmy, wants to go next?
I'll go first.
Okay.
Oh,
I go.
okay. Emmy, or Emmy's shy. Okay, Amanda lah, Amanda.
Okay. I think that, of course, like in Southeast Asia, the Southeast Asian audience are going to relate a lot more to, you know, our ghouls and monsters and things like that. And it's actually quite interesting. I don't know, actually, maybe Emir can talk about it as well. But when my films showed, you know, in Indonesia, in Singapore, here as well, locally compared to in Europe, you know, I have different reactions. I feel like here, of course, people, when they see a Pontianak, they know exactly who this girl is. They know her whole storyline. Whereas like in somewhere like Europe, they've never seen her before. So they would be like, oh, why is this girl so weird? Why is she, oh, why did she eat this person? Like they're trying to fill in the gaps. But I think that's the beauty of horror, actually, if we want to go back to that. It's like, here I am introducing you this new horror story. Like, you know how we tell each other horror stories. So I think from even a Western perspective, it's, you know, they're kind of trying to understand this new horror story that I'm telling them. But in terms of like, you know, maybe some people find Southeast Asian like horror scarier than Western. I don't know. I think that's down to taste. I personally love both. I mean, I love films like Get Out. I love films like Hereditary. Hereditary like scared me so much. I love films like It Follows, and those are all Western horror as well. They're not per se like about vampires and things like that, which is, you know, obviously a very famous trope, but they still play on, you know, this very terrifying tension, this very relatable tension. And I think a powerful film is actually, in spite of where the film is from, it's how universal is your message and how universal that your audience can be. And so that even someone from Indonesia can feel that, and someone from Switzerland can feel that as well. And I think that is what is a big challenge for filmmakers, but it's also the beauty of storytelling and filmmaking. Yeah.
Lastly, to Mr. M.A.
Okay. I think we should take advantage of what we have here. I mean, we are in a way more spiritual. So we used to believe in animism. You know, that we believe in all these spiritual beings, and we believe in everything is alive around us. So we should take advantage of what we have, and it's not just about Pontianak or Puchong. There's a lot more ghosts, you know, and not just in Malaysia, but in Indonesia, Thailand, Philippines. There's so many kinds. I used to have this book about Japanese yurei. It's about Japanese ghosts. So they have all these different kinds of ghosts, and there's so many. I hope that one day we have a book where we can compile all the ghosts that we have here. So in a way, it helps us filmmakers to just choose. Okay, you want to do this, and the next one we do this one. You know, so at least everyone can get the chance to do different ghosts each time, not just the same one. So I think we should explore more on this.
So if anyone is interested to compiling ghost stories from Malaysia, please give us a call. So thanks, Fatima. Any more questions? All right, cool. Oh, right, Nicholas Ryan. All right, what's your question?
Right, hello. This question is for Mr. Emir and Amanda. Any plans on a comedic horror anytime soon? Yeah, that's the question. And to also the other panelists, maybe if you guys have any comedic horror recommendations, that would be nice. As someone who does not like horror too much, I think comedic horror is more on my alley.
Right, who wants to go first? Comedic horror.
Unfortunately, I'm not that funny, so sorry.
Amanda?
That was already funny, Emir. I love horror comedy. I think this is something that I really want to do. So yeah, I want to do like a low budget horror comedy musical. Yeah, it's gonna be crazy, and because I'm so sick of like not being able to shoot during the pandemic, I think I postponed my shoot so much that I started writing a script that was like one location, 4 actors, everyone could just stay in the same house and then like go crazy and have fun. But that's just my personal opinion. What was the other question though? Any recommendations?
For comedy horror.
Oh, I don't know. But I think horror is funny though. Like I think because I've actually mentored like some young filmmakers on how to do horror. And I always say like if you don't have a sense of humor, you can't really do horror. Like Emir thinks he's not funny, but I know Emir and he does have a really sick sense of humor. But I know him personally, so yeah, he does have a humor. But I think the funny thing about horror is like also to be playful, because horror is your imagination. So for example, like when I say you need a sense of humor, you know, like I made a short film about a penanggalan, and we all know penanggalan, they like to eat babies, fetuses, prey on pregnant women. So I was just like, okay, my penanggalan is going to be a woman who overeats in a nurse hospital ward, maternity ward, because that's like the easiest thing. And then to me, that's already this sense of playful humor. You can go all out and have slapstick jokes, or you can be really serious about it. But I think to not be afraid of watching horror films, or you know, or to think about it, I feel horror, you need to have a sick sense of humor to come up with these ideas in that sense. Yeah.
How about you, Mr. Taufiq? What do you think about comedy horror in your point of view?
I'm more leaning towards the romance horror. Is that up in anyone's alley?
Romance horror.
Yeah, I think Amy wants to do a romance horror.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, like Twilight.
Oh, that zombie film. I can't remember what was it. How about you, Zaf? What's your point of view in comedy horror? Is it for people who's just scared of horror? Oh, here's a recommendation. One Body. Yeah, One Bodies. Yeah, that's the zombie horror romance. Or Haunted Mansion.
Yeah,
for
it
us
has
kids.
comedy, it has ghost, and it has musical.
Right.
What was the question again?
What your point of view and recommendation of horror comedy horror?
Oh, comedy horror. Oh my god. I've been watching a lot of comedy horror in local films, and I can't name one actually. It's just so many that I can't. Oh my god, which one is that is good? I can't really remember. But the last time I think I saw a good horror comedy film is Hantu Kalima Balik Rumah. It was a long time ago, 2000 something movie. That was quite good. It has comedy, it has horror, but it's stupid, but it's enjoyable. It's enjoyable. Yeah. Hantu Kalima Balik Rumah.
All right, Nicholas, is that okay for you?
Awesome stuff. Thank you so much.
For international, you know what I can recommend? I can recommend you Twilight.
The whole trilogy. Is it trilogy? The whole thing, or
That's comedy horror, right? No?
yeah,
I mean, that's
depends on
romance horror, man. That's romance horror. See, I told
Romance.
you, he wants to do a romance horror.
he has that feeling he wants to express. But hey, if you guys have any questions, you can still ask. So moving back to the questions from the chat, which I'll be reading it out. Oh man, where should I start? All right, this is a question for Shika. What would you advise people who want to start watching horror films, and what would your horror recommendation be? And also maybe there was one question also where, can a person who doesn't watch horror films, can that person direct or make a horror film? So yes, anyone? Oh, Amanda already nodding. Yeah. Recommendation of horror films if they want to start from somewhere, and can someone make a horror film without watching horror film?
Okay, I can answer the second question. Absolutely yes. Like, if you are afraid of horror films, you can still make horror films. I think so, because I've actually made a young filmmaker make a horror film, and she was like terrified of horror films. And that short film is now like traveling to lots of festivals, and it was really fun for me to like kind of introduce her to this genre, because I think like that's why I approach horror in different ways. Like, for example, just now I said approach it with humor, or approach it with fear of not ghosts or monsters if that's what you're scared of. What are you afraid of in the world? So horror can be so many things, and therefore you don't have to be a horror buff like to make a horror film. But you know, you got to embrace the genre still. Like, the genre still does call for fear. It does call for certain things that are stereotypical of horror, and I do think that like these things you shouldn't be afraid to do. And so it's that balance. So she was always telling me she's afraid to watch horror films, and I was just like, why don't you just watch it like a filmmaker and imagine, you know, everyone being on set and tired. It's the same thing. So yeah, I think it's possible. I know that like I've even spoken to festival programmers who are afraid to watch horror, or like some people in the jury afraid to watch horror, and if they have to watch a horror film, like I'm always like, what are you gonna do? How do you approach this? And I know the fear is real, and unfortunately like those people ask like their interns to watch it and stuff, which I think is a shame. I think you should just embrace the idea that this is a film. If you're afraid of it, imagine like the Exorcist girl sitting next to you having her like dinner with you during break time. Like, come on. It's all make-believe, like especially in film at least. So yeah, it's definitely possible in my opinion.
How about you, Mr. Emmy? What do you think about this? And also the recommendations, if you have any, to start off.
Yeah, I don't really watch a lot of horror films in the first place. So I guess I came from that side when I do raw. So that's why I wanted to do something slightly different for here. So of course I think can. Again, because when I look at my references, something like Killing of Sacred Deer, Michael Haneke's film is not considered a horror film, right? But then again, it's how you take certain parts that you think that might work, then you can do it in a way something your own. A film like even Antichrist, or you know, is something different. And for I would say a more commercial kind of film, even Suspiria is something different. You know, and you can always explore things that are not the typical jump scare stuff. You can always explore different things, even if you're not into horror, or you're scared watching horror film. I think if you're scared, then I think it is better. I guess, because you're in the audience shoes in a way. So when you shoot, I guess you know how whether it's scary or not, right? I mean, it's better that way, because for me, when I shot my hunting scene,
Is he saying something? Oh man, wait, can you guys hear?
so many questions
Okay.
when you're on set, the things, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Emmy. How about you, Taufiq? do you think, have you worked with any directors who have not watched any horror films but managed to make a horror film? And if so, can you tell us about experience and also your recommendations, even though you love romance, horror?
Well, I Live to Juramancy, the director was Faizal Shah. He that was his first. I guess it's an action horror. It was a big budget studio film. So that was his first. So he was going through all these references and then he was discussing with the team whether this works or how do we make it even more scarier. The I guess the in an art sense, how do we set this a scene, or how do we make this ghost scarier looking? Yeah, it all boils down to taste and I guess it's individual takes on what's scary and what's not. It's hard to say, oh, this is really scary or this is not scary. Some people might think it's scary, some people might think it's not scary. But I guess at the end of the day, it's how the director envisions it. If he trusts his feeling and his vision, then the viewers might feel the same way. So in that sense, that was my experience working with a first-time director who was shooting action horror. And my personally, I don't like and I don't watch a lot of horror movies. I'm more into midsummer-ish kind of horror, where you don't there's no entity, there's no ghost, there's no jump scare. It's more of a thinking horror. You know that you can feel it's horrifying and scary, but you don't really understand. Like you're watching something, but it's scary, but it's actually there's no ghost. It's just the scene, the tension building up of how characters thinking, and you'll be like, oh shit. It's that sense. I enjoy more that kind of horror movies than rather than your the typical jump scare ghost. Yeah, that's from my take personally.
All right. How about you, Zaf?
I think before I mention the type of films that not a horror fan made, I think I want to share you guys 5 of my favorite horror movies. First is The Witch. Filem Emir Ezwan was heavily inspired by The Witch. This is the one. Second of all is Midsommar. It's good. Great. And A Quiet Place Part 1 and Part 2. It doesn't have a ghost, but it's a monster, but it's good. Hereditary. It's always one of my favorite. And last but not least, Get Out. So if you all remember, Jordan Peele was a heavily
guy.
Yes, comedy. He's a comic, but nobody ever expecting he would make this kind of film. So that's how I view myself from non-industry players. I see that as if you want to do horror, just do it. Maybe in your twisted mind, there's a lot of good things to come out with. So yeah, just do it.
All right. Thank you, Zaf, for that. I think it reminded me of someone. I think there was a Japanese artist. I think his name was Junji Ito, where his art is all mostly disturbing kind of thing, but his personality, it's a very 180 degree where he say, oh, I love cats, I love cute animals, but if you look at his art, his comic, it's so disturbing, seeing like fish have legs walking around. I won't talk much about that. If you guys are interested, you guys can even look at Junji Ito. But oh wow, there's so many more questions. But yeah, guys, if you have any question you ask directly, you guys don't be shy. You just raise your hand and yeah, we'll pass it back to you. So that's one question to Mr. MA. Apparently, I think this person is a student. So his question is, currently I'm doing a critical thinking assignment for Raw Film. I've watched this film many times, and every time I watch this film, I got my own different perspective for each time I watch. may I know what is the origin ideation of this brilliant film and what inspired you for this film? This film shows us that we don't need ugly ghosts to symbolize this film is a horror film. Genius storytelling. Yep.
Okay. What perspective? I think bro is something that has different perspective. It is partly existential crisis that I was having also, questioning what is creation, or questioning what is a creator, and questioning why do we exist, and questioning whether if there is a creator, why do we have our own free will, or do we have our own, you know, ways of doing things, or we're just a pawn, in a bigger scheme of things. And being, growing up believing in Islam and believing in having just one God and believing in the devil and the angels and everything is just, and you tend to question, and all this, you tend to question whether uh, can you really do anything at all by yourself, or is just part of the whole bigger things, and you're just a pawn, and you're just, drifting in a river where you can't do anything at all actually. So in a way, Ro is like that. Ro is more about questioning all these things, and that's why I think even when I do certain scenes, for example, there's this one shot where this girl is walking towards tree, which is on a fire. To me, there's two different perspectives on that shot itself. Even for me, there's two different things. One is her going to, for example, going to the devil. That's one perspective. There's also another perspective if you read about Moses, where he went to a mountain and he meet God, and he meet God in a bush in with fire. So in a way, I can also see that her being a spirit walking towards God, you know. So I myself looking at my film, which has different meaning for each different scene. I have different perspective also. So I guess it's meant to be that way.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Emir. And I hope the person who asked that question, good luck in your assignment. Please don't plagiarize. Okay. Since time is running really low, and there were so many questions left. So there's a question coming from Shafiq Jibin. So coming from Malaysia, horror seems to always have a close tie with religion. So what do the panelists think about the religious horror corundum? Any comments about it? And I think I also had a question about this where how do you not try to hard sell that religion to say like, you need to have the priest or bomo to destroy the antagonist? Like, so what is your opinion on this? Like, what's the level of not showing too much religion, and also what's your opinion of using religion to defeat the monster or the creature? I guess we
Can I share with you guys?
Yeah.
I think the question really related to Munafik 1 and Munafik 2. If you guys have watched it, the solution of that problem of the film is, what do you call that? It's an act of God, something that happens out of nowhere. So that is one of the things that a lot of, I don't know, maybe local filmmakers like to use that term to end the film. Instead, you can make a lot of other options. Like if you guys watch Midnight Mass, TV series on Netflix right now, it has 7 episodes, and it has a really great reference to the Bible. But then again, the story wise, it's common in a lot of religion. So it's adaptive to a lot of religion as well. So I think Midnight Mass is a good example, I think. But it is of course a hard sell of Christianity. So yeah, it's a hard sell. So I don't know anything else that involves religion that is not a hard sell. I don't know. Maybe other can share.
Taufiq?
I think it all boils down to what your story is. So how do you want to tell a story? If you don't if you don't want to touch too much of religion, then your story shouldn't be intact of or be has that religious aspects to it. But if you want it to be I guess intact with religion, yeah, I guess it just boils down to what you want or what you want to tell or your story is, and what's the outcome of it. Yeah, but in Malaysia, that's the thing. We are more in we are more closer to religion, so we tend to touch it when we do horror, especially if there's a ghost. We there will be a bomo, or there will be an ustad, or there will be a priest to summon out all these spirits. So I guess, yeah, again, at the end of the day, it's the story lah. Yes.
Amanda, what do you think about this? Using religious element to solve the problem.
I don't think it solves any problems. I think I agree. It's that you can use anything in a horror film, of course, but talking about religion, I can see why religion can be used quite a lot in horror films, because religion also falls in this idea of belief, and then we as filmmakers are also trying to make you believe our story and believe our ghosts and believe that this thing is real. So I think religion is a very kind of nice way to kind of introduce the audience into it. It's tricky to answer this because we are in a country that has a lot of religious sensitivities as well. So, I mean, as a storyteller, it's up to you if you want to play on that. You can be very poetic about it. You can question it. Yeah, all these things, but it's tough. Religion is a really difficult thing to talk about in Malaysia, at least. So, yeah, but I can even Exorcist, one of the most famous horror films in the world, was about religion. But actually, what I love about Exorcist is that it was about a priest questioning his belief in God and then being challenged. And so that's just one story. I mean, we've named so many other horror films already in this past panel session. So it doesn't always have to be about religion all the time.
Lastly, Mr. Emir, what do you think about it?
I think, yeah, it's okay, but it's just a matter of how you do it. I would love to have, if somebody would do something like Constantine, Keanu Reeves. If anyone have watched that's religion, that's Satan. There's a lot of things, but it's really fun. You can always go into that direction. I would love to do something like that also. So it's okay. I mean, it's up to you.
All right, thank you. Since time is really, really running low, I'm going to go through one last question. I'm so sorry, everyone. But question from Saswan. Hi, Emmy and Amanda. I'm currently trying to write my horror script about Saka, but it's so hard to do research about it with the lack of written materials online. Any advice on how can I get more insight about something like this?
Why are you only looking online? You can talk to your friend whose grandma, whose auntie, and these stories and tales don't just belong on websites. I'm sorry to say this, but your creativity comes from everywhere as well. So in terms of researching about Saka, if you can't find it online, go find some books. There's definitely a lot written about it. There's a lot of oral storytelling about Saka. Just start talking to people. Maybe even if you don't know anyone, go on an internet forum or an internet group, find it on Facebook, ask the person who wrote their story on Reddit. There's so many ways to find it. I think you just need to dig deeper, in my opinion at least. I don't know about Emir.
There's actually a lot of old books about all this actually. Really a lot. Really old books. We just need to find them actually. Go to library. You can find a lot of things on shamanism. Really, I went to library. Because you can't find much online sometimes, and there's a lot old books that you can find, which is very interesting. So please go to the library.
So guys, please don't be a zoomer. Please move your butts and go to the library. And please ask your grandparents. Your grandparents or your neighbors would have more interesting stories than online. All right. I'm so. Wait. Does anyone want to add on before we conclude the events? No, Zaf, Kamal, Taufiq. Sorry. No. All right. So we are near the end. I'm so sorry. There's a few more questions, but as a closing remark for this webinar, I would like to invite our dear panelists to promote or share with us for their upcoming projects. Like maybe like someone said, Emir is going to do a horror romance or something. But yeah, if you guys have any upcoming projects, you can share right now before we end this to promote your projects. Zaf, anything you're going to promote in your website or your YouTube channel?
I have two things. I have been publishing my own website, which is Zhafvlog.com, which is you can review and rate your local films and international films. Because when we talk about IMDb and Rotten Tomatoes, those are reflected on international preferences. So we want to do this kind of like a close up to local preferences. So yeah, you guys can go to Zhafvlog.com and review and rate the local films and international films. And somehow next week I'm going to release my interview with Escape Room 2 director and actors of Escape Room 2, the Tournament of Champions. So yeah, look forward for that. So yeah, that's the current project. Thank you.
All right. How about you, Mr. Taufiq? Do you have any upcoming projects that you're going to can share to us?
So I'm just waiting for Ime's horror romance new script. Yeah, so I'm just gonna wait for that. So currently I'm just jobless and I'm just waiting for Ime to pass me the script.
Oh, you want to share more about that, Mr. Emir?
It's actually a rom-com with a bit of horror element. Yeah.
Wow, that's a really another huge leap of faith suddenly in a different kind of things really. Man, I really am excited to watch that soon. How about you, Amanda? Any upcoming projects? Like Emmy had mentioned that you haven't started shooting. Can you share something about that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm ready to shoot, and as long as it's safe for. Okay, so my next film has a lot of children under 18. So right now I'm just waiting for them to get vaccinated and for the Kementerian to say it's safe for people under 18 to be on set again. But honestly, like when it's allowed, I just gotta go and shoot it because everyone's casted, all the locations are locked. Yeah, it's also in the horror genre. It's about a young girl. It's called Tiger Strikes right now. The Malay title is like not haven't locked down yet, but it's about a young girl who experiences puberty, and then during puberty we all have body changes, emotional changes, but her body changes are a little bit more extreme to the point of monstrosity, and she needs to decide whether she's actually the monster or the people who bully her and her society are the monsters. So yeah, it's kind of like a Harimau Jadian tale on its twist, like with a twist. So as usual, knowing me. So that's all I have to share. But I do actually want to add that like it's so nice to be on this panel, especially including someone like Zaf on this, because usually I'm on panels with like filmmakers, but people like Zaf are so important for filmmakers. So even though you say you're not industry player, you are definitely part of the industry. And guys who are listening, like please, do discuss about our work, do talk about it, because you all watch films and it's so nice to see like, someone who is like actively discussing films. So yeah, so it's really fun.
Yes. So guys, the real horror are not the monsters, but the human inside of us. And thank you everyone Do apologies again if we cannot answer all your questions. I would like to thank the audience for joining us here today. I hope you have learned a thing or two, or maybe more than that, from the horror genres in Malaysia. I would like to thank our panelists, Emir, Amanda, Taufiq, and Zaf, for your time to share with us with your knowledge, your experience, and quick thank you to the organizers, CAS and FCA MMU. Without them, this event would not be possible at all. And lastly, the advisor lecturers, Mr. Ghazi and Mr. Furkan, for helping and giving advice on this webinar. And if you still have questions, you guys can still ask the questions in our Facebook Live. If our panelists are free to answer them, they could answer them there. And one more thing, please leave your feedback or comments about today's webinar. It's really important to us and can really help us out on our next webinar. So our technical team will be sharing the form, the link somewhere there. So fill in the form, please, it really helps us. And if you like the webinar for today, don't miss out our next webinar, which will be coming real soon. And also, if you're interested in filmmaking or knows anyone that's interested in filmmaking, either finishing SPM or just doesn't know where to go in filmmaking, doesn't know the baby steps, you can check out our university social media, which is MMU Faculty of Cinematic Arts, to know more about our course and university. By the way, we are also located in Cyberjaya right now.